Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Susan Rice was on with Morning Joe. Oh, this is rich. This is really rich stuff.
I can't wait to hear it.
Yeah, you know, the Benghazi front person for the Obama administration, that truth teller.
Yeah.
Susan Rice on what the president, this president, should have known per the good work that she and her team and the Obama administration did prior to the handoff.
It was inevitable. The only question was when. And that's why during the transition, we spent time trying to prepare our successors. We provided a 69-page playbook, in effect, a war plan for the incoming administration to take off the shelf. I don't think they ever took it off the shelf. They probably put it in the trash can, given how much regard they had for anything we passed on. We established an office under my leadership in the National Security Council called the Global Health Security and Biodefense Office, with senior experts whose singular role was to scan the globe for these types of potential outbreaks, to flag them early, and enable us with others to get on top of them so that they did not become epidemics, much less pandemics. So unfortunately, all of that has been discarded to our great detriment.
I'm sorry, I heard Mika going, yeah.
Yeah, the most entertaining part of that is the gasps and the wows from Mika.
Wow.
Such incisive commentary from Mika. Here's the thing.
Yeah.
Wait, you had a plan you put together, did you? Well, why didn't you? Whoa. Why didn't you implement it? No, I mean, of course, these follow-up questions. You had a plan. You had an H1N1 task force after that pandemic, and that one of the recommendations was to replenish the 100 million N95 masks that were used during the time in which 60 million Americans were infected and 13,000 died. Why didn't you replenish the national stockpile? If you had a plan, because this was inevitable, why are we scrambling for ventilators and other personal protective equipment? Because you had a plan. All you had to do was read it and follow the guidelines. Right, Sue? What happened? Why didn't you guys do it? I mean, if you want to play this cheap-shotting bull jive, which I don't, but she's demanding that we do. And if that wasn't ridiculous enough, you had Morning Joe prosecuting his everybody knew in early January case.
We saw the clip of President Obama in 2014 predicting this. Go back to 2005. George W. Bush was talking about it. Bill Gates in 2015. Even HHS Secretary Azar in 2019 said a pandemic was what kept him up at night. But then the president was even getting warnings in early January from the CDC, from his National Security Council, from the intel community in his daily briefings. Susan, this was something, I mean, the alarms were going off for this president for a long time, were they not?
Absolutely. I mean, you just cataloged in good shorthand the many, many warnings he received. And the early warnings, let's talk about warning. Warning is both strategic, a major threat that we know is coming, and it can be tactical, which in this case it was. It's coming now, and it's coming from China. That's what he was told in his presidential daily briefing in early January. And so there is literally no excuse for this administration's lack of preparedness. 2 full months.
Really? Is that right? Anthony Fauci asked whether the U.S. might contemplate citywide shutdowns like those China was enacting. This is January 23rd.
Yeah.
No chance in the world we could do that to Chicago or to New York or San Francisco, but they're doing it, so let's see what happens. Let's see what happens? Is that shut it all down? Here's what we know. Fauci said of the other coronaviruses like SARS and MERS that they could not sustain person-to-person spread like the flu, and that such viruses maybe never will. Same day. Late January. Very, very low risk to the United States. Fauci in late January. Health and Human Services Secretary Azar on January 28th. The risk to any individual American is extremely low. We know what the WHO was saying throughout the month of January, downplaying it, repeating Chinese propaganda, dismissing the notion initially that human-to-human transmission was possible. But everybody knew. He was a prize. There's no excuse. These are the experts, aren't they? Including the international body we send $500 million to. It's just so tiresome, these individuals, really is. And the thing that's the most tiresome about it? I wish there was a forum where you could have people side by side, rather than Susan Rice in a silo on MSNBC and, people like me in a silo on conservative talk radio where Susan Rice won't come on because she's afraid that she won't get away with her crack pottery. She would actually have to answer follow-up questions. There's so few forums in which the left will deign to answer questions. They only, and again, there's some on the right that are like this too, where they're only comfortable in their echo chambers. And that's not productive, which is why, frankly, Trump standing and delivering at those task force briefings, even in the moments you don't like, is so important and represents such a paradigm shift for how politics is otherwise discussed in this country, I'm sorry to say. For more on the topic, we're pleased to be joined by Daniel Tenreiro. He is the Thomas L. Rhodes Journalism Fellow at the National Review Institute. Daniel, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, Dan and Amy. How are you?
Good
morning.
You're a journalism fellow, so before we get into some of the details with respect to the pandemic, your assessment, since everybody is sort of flying off the Wall Street Journal's criticism of the briefings, your assessment of the importance and productivity of the task force briefings.
Well, I think the president, especially recently, has been doing a better job of informing the American people. Somebody has to deliver a briefing, right? So, you can't just not communicate. So right. The president does what he can. And, I think they started off maybe a little slow. And but once the president caught his stride, I think he's been doing a good job. On the modeling point, which is something that you two were talking about earlier, I think they could have done a better job rolling that out, because just coming out and saying 100,000 people are going to die in the best case scenario wasn't even what they were thinking, apparently, in the within the task force. So I think that was a mistake, and some of the communication has been subpar. But recently, I think he's been doing a good job and has been balancing the need to reassure people with the need to inform people quite well.
Do you think there's any fear-mongering going on?
Well, certainly. I think it's difficult because we don't know what's happening. That's the bottom line. That's what the models tell us, right? The best we can do is roughly estimate what might take place. So I think you have to balance the need to communicate the truth, which is that there's a lot of uncertainty here, with also the need to assuage panic. And I think a lot of people maybe are not quite doing that. Just to go back to a point that you two were talking about just now, the idea that if we had only listened to the experts, that we would have solved this problem is preposterous. There was a Harvard PhD, I'm not sure where he works now, his name's Eric Ding, on January 20th, which is when we had our first confirmed case in Washington. He said the WHO and the CDC needs to declare an emergency now. And the Atlantic magazine ran a story headlined, "How to Misinform Yourself About the Coronavirus," saying this is crazy. We can't listen to the alarmism. We have to be level-headed here. The experts were not ahead of this.
Well, so, and just to accentuate that point, here's the other thing that politicians shouldn't get away with, and they wouldn't if they weren't allowed to exist in silos. Joe Biden from his Delaware compound. Listen to the scientists. Listen to the experts. Hey,
do we know where he is?
Oh, I don't know where he is.
No, he's in Delaware.
It could be in the center of the earth, as far as. But
well, he gave a speech with a green screen. from what I could tell.
They brought that into his compound.
I don't know. Maybe he's bunking over at Bernie Sanders' place as they game plan next steps. But here's the listen to the scientists, listen to the experts. Hey, you know what? Some of the scientists disagree with one another. Some of the experts disagree with one another. They have the same credentials. They're making cogent points and rational arguments, and they're coming to slightly different conclusions about what we should do.
Can you imagine that?
Right. And so this is where the adult who is elected to represent the interests of the American people writ large has to take the advice and counsel of experts in a range of areas and then make a difficult decision, understanding that in the real world there are trade-offs between choosing A over B.
Right. The point of science as an enterprise is you study something in a lab for years, right? And then Newton comes up with the theory of gravity, and then it's altered for the next 200 years as we incrementally improve and experiment. It's not something that you can in 2 months come to a perfect conclusion on and save the world with. You need to act, without sufficient information, and the modeling makes this clear, right? Because I have trouble criticizing the modelers themselves because they're doing what they can.
Yeah.
The point is they're just imperfect tools. We don't have enough data right now to be able to estimate what's going to happen, and we have to act, under uncertain circumstances, which is what a leader does. A general who goes into battle doesn't know what's going to happen, and there are all sorts of uncertainties, but he's trained to act under uncertainty, and that's the kind of leadership we need now. We don't need to be handing over our public policy to, groups of experts who are, as you mentioned, disagreeing on a lot of things.
And it's interesting too, because talk about being frozen in time. We're talking about being frozen in time right now because of the shutdown. We're frozen in time from the 2016 election. We're having the same argument over again about whether or not we should turn over our lives to some technocracy. And you have the same people making the same arguments about global institutions that are under assault, legitimately so, like add now the World Health Organization to the growing list. Same arguments. So it is still this battle for the future of America between people who believe in a vanguard technocracy, effectively, and people who believe in free minds and free markets, it seems to me.
Well, also, if you look at France, Macron, the president of France, is a technocrat. And the French government has always been pretty technocratic. They have their what's called grandes écoles, which are basically the universities that all the administrators go to, all the bureaucrats. And what did he do? Exactly what Trump did. They had elections. At some point, I guess it was sometime in mid-March or maybe late February, and Macron chose to have the elections in the middle of this outbreak because he was he's weighing the harms of suspending elections with the potential that the disease would spread. But that's the arch technocracy in Western Europe, and they've done exactly the same thing that the president has done here. So it just doesn't add up when people say that some technocracy would have solved this problem.
He is Daniel Tenreiro. He is the Thomas L. Rhodes Journalism Fellow at the National Review Institute. Daniel, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's news, opinion, insight. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Can you imagine, in the midst of all this craziness, your little girl or boy opens up the door and sees a 3-foot chocolate Easter bunny? Perhaps that's what we need right now. And More Kiss Chocolates, that's been celebrating 100 years in business, can make that happen. More Kiss Chocolates will deliver the 3-foot bunny for free within 30 miles from the retail stores in Palatine or Huntley. At morekisschocolates.com, you can see the 3-foot bunny plus all their Easter goodies with bunnies from 3 inches and up, from traditional bunnies to golfer bunnies. They also have handmade cream eggs, baskets, crosses. And while you're at morekisschocolates.com, check out this cool video of them making the 3-foot chocolate bunny. Hey, deliveries are available everywhere, but your 3-foot bunny delivery is free within 30 miles. So stop in at the store at Palatine and Huntley or call 847-359-3454. That's 847-359-3454. MoreKissChocolates.com.
What's the easiest way to eat a lot of fruits and vegetables? Balance of Nature. By simply removing the water and air, Balance of Nature can take 31 whole fruits and vegetables and put them into quick and easy to eat capsules. With just 3 fruit capsules and 3 veggie capsules, you get the equivalent of over 10 servings of fruits and vegetables every day. That's a lot of stored energy that your body will love. So if you're looking for an easier way to get clean energy, go to balanceofnature.com and order your bottles of sunshine today. Don't wait to see what getting over